and I'm here with our
We missed you,
wonderful.
James.
Well, I mean, I've been around. I just haven't been
But I
on
think
this
you
show.
talk to me every day, so I don't know really how high and intense my missing you can be.
That's why I'm talking to the audience, not you. So that is the wonderful and the one and only Ray Sasser. Good morning, Ray.
Good morning, James. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful on this Saturday.
Well, cool.
So today's show is going to be a really great one, just like it is every week. We're going to Ray is going to talk a little bit about the market update in our Alamo Ria Houston main meeting last weekend. We actually went in great detail over the market update, and so Ray is gonna talk about that. And then if he leaves me any time, we're going to I'm gonna interview him. I've known Ray for almost about 8.5 years now. He's had a tremendous impact on, my mindset, my real estate business, and everything like that. But one of the things I haven't really gotten a chance to do, especially in a setting like this, is really just kind of, step back from the real estate aspect and interview him. And so I would like to do that on the second part of today's show.
And if we have time, no guarantees we'll make it, but if we have time, we're going to look at how to effectively work with your partners. And our partners for real estate investors are going to be your rehabbing team, your property manager, your attorneys, your title companies. There's probably 10 or 15 people that you work with over and over. And it's really about quality and not quantity. You treat these people like you're their partner, and they'll work with you for 35 years and 40 years, which a lot of our guys have and ladies have.
So before we get into that, let me go ahead and acknowledge a few of our wonderful sponsors of today's show. And first and foremost is Cookie Long over at Transact Title. She's very wonderful, and that's actually they actually provide the room that we have our main meetings in at that location. And then next is Hal Gailey with Bio City Techs. He is our lifesaver here.
Our lifesaver, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just, in fact, I was talking, every time I'm around Hal, always want to like get technical information out of him. Like, why does Yahoo keep showing up on my damn computer? I didn't put it there. And some little renegade interloper is in my computer, just loading it in there, the Yahoo search engine. And it's nice to talk to Hal because he not only knows the answer, he knows why it's like that. And he knows how it happens. And so, and not to mention just the technical stuff he does in producing the radio show and just making it work on a local level so we don't have to be in the studio.
And then there's also Tom Stinson at Goosehead Insurance that I'd like to acknowledge. And for all of any vendors that we have or any sponsors that you're looking to get in contact with, just visit massivepassiveshow.com and you'll have basically access to all of our information there.
Yeah.
The vendors, our YouTube channel, our Facebook group, and everything. So again, that's massivepassiveshow.com, and you get all of our information there. So that's
well, one last thing is Pat's not with us. Pat is like, he runs one of our weekly coaching calls that we do every month, and he's a rehabber, and he helps people get their jobs done and stuff like that. And that's, you don't know what you don't know, and you think you know how to do stuff, and you find out after you've lost $20,000 that you did it wrong or it's the wrong person. So I'm just Pat's not on the show with us today because he's having a big Christmas party, and so he's getting ready for that, and but it's a pleasure to work with Pat, and we miss you, Pat.
Absolutely. Hope you're listening, Pat, and we'll see you when you're back. So that's let's go ahead and jump into the market update.
Okay. Well, last week we did that at our RIA meeting, which is 1001
West Loop South.
Thank you. They got too many numbers. Like, what street can have West and South in the same street name? That doesn't even make sense. Unless it's like West South Street. Maybe I could go with that. But, West Loop South. So it's like three names.
The easy way to remember that, it's literally right across the street from the Galleria. It's between I-10 and...
a little bit north of Galleria area.
Yeah.
But
I-10 and it's between I-10 and 59 on 610.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So so we regularly do market reports, and that's so important. You know, if maybe it's your first deal and you're out there trying to make it, I don't know how much you want to worry about market reports, other than it kind of the market report. What I do is I'll do the market report, and then I try to think in terms of how it affects investors, and especially me, since I'm the one. When I do the market report, I kind of give you a thumbnail sketch, and then I do a lot of reading on all these different things, and then that helps me understand how it works. But I've been around long enough that I can see how it works with other investors. And although my main business is not, say, industrial spaces, I still want to talk about it. So we'll talk about industrial, we'll talk about retail, we'll talk about residential, we'll talk about apartments. And then occasionally we'll try to bring in somebody that's maybe a heavyweight, say, in apartments, because there's a thing they say that all real estate is local. And when you put that in your head, you're gonna start. It's going to become a paradigm, and you're going to start looking at that, and you're going to say, "Yeah, you know what's happening in Utah is not what's happening in Texas." And if you tell me the National Association of Realtors says, "Hey, this is how many months of inventory we have," that doesn't mean anything to us if you're in Conroe, Texas, or if you're in the Woodlands, or if you're in Houston. So all real estate is local, and we want local data. But we'll in our presentations we'll usually talk about national, state, and then local, and it's because they're all interconnected. And now you get in your car, and this afternoon you can be in 3 states over. So anyway, so you want to just kind of dive into it, James?
Yeah, let's go ahead and dive into it.
So just real quick, when I look at this, I'm really looking at things that affect me the most. And if you want to help us do the market report and you're coming from a different angle, then we're definitely looking for volunteers. And I will put you up in front of the room, and you can talk about whatever your specialty is, as long as it's good for investors. So one of the things I looked at is, like, you hear all these appreciation numbers, 15%, 12%, 20%, and there's a lot of stuff appreciating by 20% per year. And just to do the math of that real quick. So let's say you have a $200,000 asset that goes up 20% in a year. That's $40,000. That's more money, by far, multiple times more money than what you made in rent. Now, is that going to happen? Is that going to keep happening? Are we fixing to have a crash? Do we have a bubble? How was it last year? What's it going to be next year? So those are things that are going into my head when we're doing the market report. And those are the questions that I try to answer. And especially if you're an investor and you have assets, then these are important things. And the other thing is, like, when do you want to sell? When do you want to hold on to things? And so we'll just talk about that real briefly. But we looked at last year's appreciation, and people say it's 8 to 12%. It varies by neighborhood. And a lot of people are projecting the same level of appreciation. And that's really complex how they figure that stuff out. So, and I'm not on that level, but I can at least report what a lot of the respected economists are saying that are in this business, and are responsible for kind of figuring this out, because it makes a huge difference. If you're going to go somewhere and spend $1 million, are you going to go somewhere and open up a Samsung chip plant? Are you going to open up a car plant, like Elon Musk has? So we've got to kind of have some sort of projection. So they're saying the appreciation, at least in residential, is going to go up that 10 or 12%. And there's a lot of reasons why they're dropping it down from 20%. So we're going to look at that. The bottom line, I think, is that if you have employment increasing, which it increased in the MSA for Houston, which includes Houston, Galveston, all the suburbs around. They say that the population, or the jobs increased 50,000 by 50,000, and year over year. That's 1,000 people per week, and then somebody's got to be taking those jobs. Now, it's kind of it's a little more complicated this year than normal, because a lot of those jobs could be where we're regaining jobs from COVID. because there was a big drop off. But uh, we're having similar numbers in population. So we see that if the population is going to keep increasing, and then the work is going to keep increasing, then that means inventory is going to keep shrinking. There's going to be a continued high demand for housing. And so we see that. And all the people, the guys that look at mega trends, from year to year or decade to decade, they say that's not going to change. And in Texas, one of the other and I can't put it up, but one of the graphs we showed is just like, one of the graphs that we showed where populations were moving. There were more population. I didn't realize this, but there are more counties that dropped in population in Texas than grew.
Really?
Yeah, doesn't that surprise you?
With as many people that are continuously moving here?
Yeah, but the point is the population is skyrocketing in Texas. And what's happening is people are going to the suburbs. Like the population, Houston's not really increasing a lot because it's landlocked. It's surrounded by the suburbs. The same with Dallas, San Antonio, Austin. So it's surrounded by those places, and so it's the suburbs that are growing. And if you look at it's really good to look at the graphic where you're seeing the different counties and seeing how the populations are growing and shrinking. And it's like, there's my roadmap. There's where I want to be buying. That's in the path of progress. And if you're not buying in the path of progress, you're not going to get regular and consistent appreciation. In fact, you don't have to have appreciation. You just have to buy in path of progress. You're going to have appreciation just because you bought in the path of progress. So we looked at that, saw something else. They're forecasting. I looked at a prediction going forward in time to 2015, and because I do primarily residential and single family homes and maybe small rental apartments, the chart ended at 2050, and it's like looking at your roof outside. It starts at the bottom and just keeps going up, and at 2050 it didn't change all the way. It's just the graph is just going straight up, and we won't stay with this very long, but on the market report, because we got a lot of other things to talk about. So hopefully, are we doing good on time?
Doing good on time.
Okay, good. So the one thing that's interesting is when you look at these numbers, always think in terms of like, what does it really mean? For example, the sales volume in units, number of units, dropped last year for houses, and so you got to ask yourself like a couple questions like, why did they drop? What's happening in condos and townhomes, because they're like houses too. A townhome is very similar to a house, and a condo is not as similar, but it's somewhere between an apartment and having your house with a land and everything with it. So so we look at all that, and what happened is the units dropped in houses, in townhomes and condos. The rate of absorption and the number of units sold went up over the last year. And what that tells us is that we're losing inventory, because if you've been in this business, you'll see that if the market starts declining, the first things that you start having vacancies in and inventory in is apartments. The second thing you start having in is condos. The third thing is townhomes, and then houses. So just what's the reverse order of that? If you're absorbing property, like you have a lot of people moving in, you have a lot of people buying houses, a lot of new jobs, the first thing to go away is available inventory in houses. Then it's townhomes, then it's condos, and then it's apartments, because that's a pecking order. That's the way people want to buy stuff. And so what that says is our inventory houses have dropped, but the demand has increased. And based on what we just talked about, so the demand's increased. What does that do with the cost of houses? It's going to go up. What does that do with the months of inventory? What is that going to do with the days on market? What is that going to do to the rehabber who says, well, should I do the $20,000 upgrade or the $15,000 upgrade? That's a $5,000 decision. That's something as coaches we help our students with. That's something with construction that Pat kind of talks to his clients like, hey, I'm not a market expert, but are you really paying attention to the market? Well, like, what kind of rehab do you want to do? What is your exit strategy? So those are kinds of things that are important. Probably the last thing I probably want to talk about, and we go in a little bit more detail in our monthly RIA meetings when we have a market report. So the last thing is like, are we in a bubble? What's going to have happen to real estate in the future? And when I first sat down to do this market report, I really didn't know because you just can't believe the press out there. You can't believe the media because they're selling commercials. So I kind of tried to figure out like what's happening in employment, what's happening in population, what's happening in inventory, what's happening, in Texas. I mean, we look at things like how many people rent a one-way U-Haul from somewhere else to Houston. How many people do that going from Houston to somewhere else? And you look at that and you can see that the data says it's going to continue with a strong demand. So then the only other factor that I probably could, two factors really is what's going to happen with inflation rate and what's going to happen with interest rates. So we looked at inflation. Inflation, just in case you don't know, they don't report inflation properly. It's a big lie. Inflation is the big lie because they take out all the things that go up in price and then they say, oh, we're not having inflation. Well, put the stuff back in there, like food and gas and the cost of housing. Put that back in there, and then we'll have a real inflation number. But they don't really put that in there. But we know for a fact inflation's up. So that's the thing we're worried about. Interest rates are staying they're stable. They're unstable on a small range, so they're effectively stable. And there's a lot of forecasts that in the next year or two, interest rates aren't really going to substantially change. So that helps with the concept that we're going to continue having continued appreciation. The other thing we look at is like the delinquency rate for houses year over year, going from July to July. So, for example, if you're going to have a big tsunami of foreclosures, the people that were, for example, in default in July, they're the ones that are going to be foreclosed on now, right? So if we look at year over year from July 2020 to July 2021, what we see is that the rate of delinquencies, long-term delinquencies, not short-term, but both of those numbers, we measure long-term, we measure short-term, both of those rates are dropping year over year. So you would expect that to go the other direction. Now, maybe there's some people that can explain why my thinking on this is wrong, but I suspect that our delinquency, we're not going to have that big tsunami. There's still going to be people, there's lots and lots of people that are hurting from COVID that got 3 or 4 months behind. They might not qualify for modification. And so in that case, there's going to be a lot of foreclosures, but I don't see a big uptick in foreclosures coming like everybody says. A lot of people who don't look at the numbers suspect.
Well, I got a question for you in that regards. There's a lot of talks about foreclosures and what we could possibly see. But one of the things that is being talked about is the difference between the current situation versus 2008 or 2007, 2009. But the difference that people are talking about is the fact that back then, the people that lost their home, they didn't really have a lot of equity.
Right.
Today, there is equity in a lot of these homes, even if they're being foreclosed on.
Yeah.
What impact do you see that having, or what
That's
do you have
exactly
to add?
true. In fact, we talked about that at the RIA meeting. The amount of equity you have in a house matters because let's say you have 3% equity and it takes 6% to 8% to close on your house. So you could owe less than what the house is worth, but you're still going to have to bring money to the closing. And a lot of people can't do it. A lot of people can't buy their way out of a mess. They can't say, okay, I'm going to bring money, or they can't say, hey, I'm going to give up equity because it wasn't there in 2007. And that was one of the primary indicators that it was going to be bad. And they changed a lot of rules. And I think I don't normally like being regulated, but a lot of rules they changed were good rules. The way lenders were using appraisers to lie about the math, and then appraisals weren't right, so they changed the way a fundamental way appraisals were done. Now the lender can't have his favorite appraiser anymore, quote, quote, quote. And so that's really helped out. And now they're saying that our equity in our houses are at all-time highs. So that means when that person gets into trouble, they can effectively either give up their equity or sell the house at a fire sale and still come to the closing. So that's another indicator of why, and I'm glad you brought that up. There's another reason why we just don't see it happening. And by the way, in 2000, I started buying houses right before I really started getting where I could buy houses pretty good and effectively right when the RTC came along. And the RTC, they took the attitude, we're fire selling everything. In 2007, they said, no, we're going to do shadow inventory. We're going to lean on the lenders and have them hold on to inventory a lot longer than they expect. And we're going to help fund their deficiencies. And we're not going to foreclose on these properties. And they called that the shadow inventory. So when we were doing the market reports, we were monitoring the shadow inventory. And the shadow inventory, if you look at the graph, month after month after month was getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then the economy turned around and it started getting smaller. And everybody, if you were buying houses and watching the market data, everybody knew what shadow inventory was. And as we were reporting on it, it went big and then it just went away. It just got smaller and smaller and smaller. The market got better. And all of a sudden, nobody talked about it anymore because it didn't exist anymore. Not on the level that were alarming numbers. And it was alarming numbers. When it was huge, everybody was using the RTC paradigm and say, oh, they're going to have to fire sell everything. It's going to flood the market. It's going to destroy house prices for mom and pop homeowner who needs to downsize because they don't have 4 kids living at home. It never happened. It never happened. And so all those people that were screaming the sky is falling were just wrong.
So, Ray, we got about probably 3 or 4 minutes, then we got to get into the next part of the show.
Okay.
What else do you want to close on as far as the market report goes?
On the market report, I think the big thing is if you didn't get into real estate, you lost 20% appreciation. Those people that got into real estate in 2007 and held on to it in 2008, their net worth increased incredible, especially if they're active buyers. And because interest rates, we believe, are going to stay low because the market values are going to continue to go up. And because if there is inflation and you have debt, that erodes debt effectively. So to me, it's time to buy. It's time to get involved in real estate. If you're not involved in it, it's been time for a while. And now with interest rates so low, interest rates on refinancing can be as low as 3.75 on rental inventory. That means it's automatic cash flow. If you look at what the amount of rents are and you look at the cost of your money, and you're not understanding how this cash flow works, and when you have a tenant paying off your house, you have cash flow, you get lots of tax benefits, you often will get appreciation, the tenant will pay your debt down. It doesn't make sense not to be involved in something like this. I mean, we're throwing a lot of stuff out there. It may sound complicated, and that's why we believe in our RIA groups. We have a RIA group in San Antonio called Alamo RIA, and we have the same thing here, and it's Alamo RIA for Houston. And if you don't understand that, you need to come to those meetings, because what we do is we bring speakers to those meetings who know what they're doing, who are experts in different niches, whether it's assisted living, affordable housing, Airbnb, rentals, owner finance. I mean, everything that you can do to make this work. And some deals require different things. You can't just paint everything with one brush and say, oh, that's the highest and best use. You know, some deals you should wholesale. And not many, but there's occasional ones where you should. Yeah. So, okay. I think we put our audience to sleep.
Yeah.
So.
And let me just say this. Wholesaling is not always bad.
Right.
It's just you have to use it right. Not only use it, at the right time, but even if you're just starting out, there's a big phenomenon about, people wanting to get into wholesaling and everything. It is a good way to get started, but you don't have to stay there. So,
it's the last choice, not the first choice.
And we talk about that in our meetings, and then on our weekly live trainings, and then also our coaching calls. But let's go ahead and jump into the interview. Actually, I want to pause and I want to give out our information again. It's massivepassiveshow.com. Again, that'll give you a link to our YouTube channel, our Facebook groups, and everything like that. So again, massivepassiveshow.com for all of our information. Now I'm going to go ahead and jump into this interview. And, some of these questions or a few of these questions are going to be real estate related. But when I'm asking these questions and I'm going to be listening to Ray's answer, I'm listening for more of reading between the lines. I want to get in his mind, and I want to unravel his mind and see how he thinks. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I want to know
if
how
you're going to talk about me, expect a lot of one-word answers. Something you said get in my mind this morning. I was on the computer and I was doing something, and then I started doing something else, and I thought, I sat down on this computer to do something, and I'm in a rabbit hole. And so I climbed up out of that rabbit hole, and I found out I was in another rabbit hole. And I climbed up like 3 or 4 more levels, and I finally got back to what I sat down on the computer to do. I don't know if I'm the only one that does that, but I hope you don't end up in a rabbit hole somewhere.
We all find ourselves in rabbit holes every now and then. Question. I saw this question, and I really need to do it in our Facebook group, but I saw it yesterday. It was either yesterday or the day before, and it got a lot of conversation going. And
by the way, before you asked the question, you said Facebook group, so you need to let people know what we're doing on our Facebook groups.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So we have 2 Facebook groups. We have one is Texas Real Estate Investing Community. It's growing super fast. We monitor that group. It's all about, being a community for real estate investors.
We crossed 20,000 people.
We made it to 20,000. Yeah, cool.
We're going to 100.
So, yeah, we're on our way to 100,000. It's growing incredibly fast. That's like an investor community. Then we have Massive Passive Deal Makers. And that's more of like an education-based group, and
it's a good place to ask questions because a lot of smart people on there, and they can answer good questions. I mean, don't ask questions like, "How do I start wholesaling?" Because that's not good for somebody to type in. You can't answer that question in 5 sentences. But you might say like, "How do I determine what the whatever is, like what a good title company is?" Or and then that's 3 or 4 sentence answer typically.
Exactly. So this post that I saw, this was someone on their personal profile, but he asked, "What is the one thing you accomplished in 2021 that you're most proud of?" And I know a lot of people don't like to brag on themselves, but we are coming to the end of the year, and you have to celebrate your wins.
Well, we've always been buying. We never stopped buying, and a lot of people think I should stop buying, but we're still buying. Just working with like our partners and students, I do enjoy that. I didn't think that I was a teacher. Near the end of my dad's life, he ended up teaching at the community college, and it's like there's a lot of It's kind of neat to do that. And one thing is like we do a negotiation class every once in a while. And until you teach it, you don't really internalize it. You don't really get to know it. So I do love that part of it. As long as it doesn't wear me out, I love the teaching part of it. Of course, getting the Houston RIA up and running, I think we're on firm footing there. I think we've got a lot of infrastructure in place. We're hoping to grow it back the way, I was involved in the Rich Club forever. I mean, we helped grow the Rich Club. I was there in '88 when it had 200 members. I was there when it had 2,000 members. So we're hoping to grow that back because the Rich Club basically shut down from what I understand, or was sold. I don't know, but it's not active anymore, not that name anyway. And so so to grow that and surround myself with people who like doing what I do. So I do like that. Sometimes it's too much work because we're busy. We got rehabs going on. We've got properties that we're managing. Our properties, and so there's a lot going on.
So moving into 2022, what do you want your biggest accomplishment to be that next year?
To turn over the day-to-day operations to my son and daughter, and they're both heavily involved in it. They're really, what's neat is, they say you got to have the right butt in the right seat, and they do have different characteristics, and they just seem to attract to the to what their strengths are, and I'm feeding that, and we're just trying to set it up where I don't have to be involved in micromanage, and they don't like me to micromanage anyway. So that's going to be my 2022 accomplishment, and I'm hoping to do it. I'm hoping not to take the whole year. So
Cool. That's going to be a good accomplishment. We want to help you do that.
great. You
So-
want me to quit? You want me out of your hair?
Which that's
the
gonna
was it the micromanagement part, James?
no comment. So that leads me to my next question. This is more of a personal question here. What is one thing, and you may end up, listing multiple things, but what is one thing that Ray likes to do for fun? If you could just shut down for a week or so and go do whatever it is that you want, what is it that you would? Where would we find you?
I'm a big history nut. That was probably my biggest hobby, I think, because when I was in grade school, I read all the the stories about the founding fathers of the United States and stuff, and it's just like you felt like you were there. Just like if you could sit down with one of the most important leaders, most effective leaders, the person that kind of rose from nothing, and then became a leading general in the Civil War, and then become the president of the United States. And if you could sit down with him for like 12 hours and just find out what's in his head, would you do it if it was somebody on that level? And the answer is, I would do it in a heartbeat. And when Ulysses S. Grant wrote his autobiography, that's what he did. It's like when you get involved in that, he's talking to you, and to relive history and to know how history repeats itself. Is the more you know about history, the more you absolutely know history repeats itself. And like the political shenanigans that go on now, they've been going on forever. And the more you know about history, you know exactly what those events were. And so I just love history. I love going where history is made. I've typically been American history, so I'm going to, I love a little bit what I know about European history. So travel, and of course, to know history, you got to travel. I mean, you got to go there. So travel and history, that's going to be my things moving forward. And history's been with me for a long time. I never stopped loving history.
So essentially, we could probably find you traveling and going and looking at old battlefields.
Oh yeah, I haven't spent near enough time in Virginia, haven't spent enough time in Europe, haven't spent enough time just learning. And really, when you're like that, it's not even really important history that you worry about. It's just little things like going down Route 66 and feeling what it felt like to drive that 50s model car down that road and see what it looked like, and with a convertible down and feel the smell the smells and hear the sounds and see the sights. Just love it.
Cool. So me and you have a little bit in common as our competitiveness. I used to bowl competitively. I'm actually going to come out of retirement in the next few months. That's one of my goals in 2022 is to come out of retirement, hit the lanes again.
You should, because you need that.
And you were a very good pool player as well.
Yeah. As a kid, I decided I was going to be the best in the world. When I was 14, I bought a pool stick for $52. And I remember that. And I remember this. I still have that stick. I haven't used it in 35 years. But I was going to be the best. And then I realized the problem with pool is you got to beat your opponent. You got to prevail over your opponent. And I was like, okay, that doesn't work good in life. Your opponent, the person on the other side, he's got to be your partner. Partner's a lot better than opponents.
Yeah.
So,
I've faced some opponents too. So taking our competitive nature, we don't really like, adversity, or when we hit a brick wall or, plateau. So when you do that in business, you find yourself in a rut. How do you personally deal with that and get yourself out of that rut?
Well, I think different people respond differently to stimulus. Like I like breaking things down into pieces. And I think, like, if you were to, and we talk about salesmanship and stuff like that, James and I do, and a lot of topics. But if you take salesmanship, everybody thinks that, hey, you're born a salesman. You've got, if you're an extrovert, you've got some advantages. But in my opinion, introverts got a lot more advantages in salesmanship than an extrovert. And there's reason why I think that. And so people are going to respond differently because they're built differently. I like breaking things down into pieces because once I break, if there's a complicated problem and I can break it down into pieces, then it's just steps, right? It's if you look at it like, oh, this thing is coming to an end, or I can't do my relationship is doing this, or I can't control that. It's yes, you can. You just got to break it down into steps, and you've got to surround yourself with the people that are doing that on a regular basis. If you're starting as an investor, it's too much. It's an elephant, and there's no way to eat the elephant except one bite at a time. And so you have to surround yourself with people that are successful at what they're doing, whatever it is. If you want to lose weight, surround yourself with people who are working. That's the group of people that you're around. They're losing weight. They're effectively lost weight, and so that's my nature. I'm just that kind of person. And the other thing I like to do is I just like to walk. I mean, my dogs have walked thousands of miles because if you take that 30-minute break, that 45-minute break where you're walking and you're walking briskly, your body's gonna stay in shape. Your lymph nodes are gonna work right because they work based on your muscle action. So if you sit down a lot, your body's probably full of a lot of poisons and stuff. And so walk, it relaxes you, it lowers your stress, takes your mind off of it, off of what you're doing. And some of my best solutions are either taking a shower or taking a walk. So get yourself where you can relax. And I don't know if that answers your question or not.
No, it does. Because I actually had that happen to you. I had a conversation with Sharon not too long ago, and I don't remember the whole context of it, but she did say, at regular periods throughout the day, get up and take a walk.
Yeah.
And because that'll get your blood flowing. But the thing that stuck out to me was that's when your mind starts working.
Right.
So when you're looking at a problem and you're stuck on it for 20 or 30 minutes, me and Brandon, we were going over some stuff, and we got stuck, and we were there for a while. And so I was like, Brandon, time to end the conversation, and we'll pick this up in a little while. And let me tell you, I stood up and I walked right out of the office, the little office that I was in. And as soon as I walked out, boom, one word popped into my mind because I wasn't focused on it.
Right.
One word popped into my mind, and it solved the problem. It got us back on the right track.
So it's sort of like a rabbit hole. You go down a rabbit hole, and you're working on something that's not productive, and you get back out of the rabbit hole, and next thing you know, you surround yourself with different thoughts, different ideas, and just change your environment a little bit so you can kind of clear up your thinking.
So, as you know, and some of our people know, but or some of our listeners and audience know, I did mention at the beginning of the show that I've known you for quite a while now, and you've been a really good mentor and a coach to me. Not going to say the story that how I met you, but over the years, me and Ray have grown really close, and I try to, every time I'm around Ray, I'm always picking up, something else to implement. He brings the best out in me. But I wanted to ask you, and I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, but, you had the opportunity, you could have very well just kept elevating your real estate business, elevating. But you chose to bring in another element, and that was to start coaching.
Right.
So my question is, why did you do what drove you to become a coach and a mentor?
I got started with Linda. I think like Linda and I are both parents, and as parents, if you're not a parent, you kind of, I think, see things as absolutes where it's right or wrong. When you become a parent, you start living in the gray in between. Like that little turkey just lied to me. And it's like, okay, well, it's my kid. I mean, I can't just throw them away, But if you don't have kids, you might not look at it like that. You look at it like, hey, that person just lied to me, and you don't think of people like you probably should. You think people are full of foibles and complexities and contradictions, and that's the way people are. And I think just going through that experience with like my own kids and seeing how I can help them. And then like my son and daughter, when they were younger, now they're really getting good. But when they were younger and they were first started helping us with the real estate, it's like they just didn't have any frame of reference, no experience. And it's like you could show them how to do things. I'm a big believer in role playing. I'm a huge believer in role playing. And if you take something, say a sales call, or you take where you're talking to a seller or buyer, and I could tell you like, hey, these are the 7 things we want to accomplish on this phone call. If we role play once, you're going to get one of them, or 2 maybe. If we role play 5 times, you're going to get all 7 of them every time. And to see that happen before your eyes, if you're the teacher, and to see that happen before your eyes, and you say, wow, that works so effectively. I made a change forever with that person. I mean, to me, that's just really rewarding. And I could see why teachers love it. And being a big history fan, many people don't have that frame of reference. They don't know what will work and won't work because they don't have that frame of reference of what happened to the economy during this crash or what happened during that crash. And they're not interested in it. And it's like, no, you have to be interested in it. What's wrong with you? I'm going to have to talk to you until you walk away from me or until you understand.
So we have about 10 minutes left. So I'm going to ask you this one last question. And then there was one other thing that you want to talk about, how to work with your team member. So this last question is, what is your number one goal in 2022 as a coach and a mentor?
Well, I think it's always 100%. You measure your success by how your students do, period. That's the only answer is, if you measure it like that, that's a KPI basically. If you measure the KPI,
key performance indicator, by the way.
Yeah. So if you measure your success as a coach by what your students are doing and how they grow and how they advance, then you're gonna reflect on what you're doing. Like, did I do that right? Did I get that understanding out there? Did I provide the right information to them at the right time? Was I there to answer the phone for them when they had like a go or no go or play or no play decision on real estate? And that's what real estate boils down to. A lot of times we got to say, stop wasting your time. You're not going to get there, right? Or it's not going to get you to where you want. Or on a bigger thing, like, why are you wholesaling when you can just do 2 things different and you never have to wholesale any more property ever? And so you're changing the course of people's lives. And I think as a person that's bought a lot of houses over the years and then see people grow up in those houses and see how their family evolves, that's the same thing with real estate to me. I mean, it's like you can see the beginning, you can see the end, you can see how people raise their family in those houses and how that providing a good quality product got it to where people could do what a house is supposed to do. It's supposed to provide, a place for your family to grow and safety and security and give you what you need.
Well, cool. That was it. It's great information. I mean, it came from your heart. It came from your mind, and that was the purpose of this interview. For one, kind of like you mentioned in the last meeting, when you do the market reports, you like to do them for you, but then you do it for everybody else as well. Well, it's the same thing with this interview. I personally wanted to take a few minutes to get to know you a little bit more than what I already do, but also wanted our listeners and our audience, because we have our weekly live trainings, we have our meetings, and it's always about, we want you to know us, like us, and trust us,
if you start, sometimes I think I started with nothing, but I don't think about, that means I'm not thinking about what my mom did for me. It's just unbelievable, the work ethic that she put into me, the values that she put in me. And then later on, when I was about 15 or 16, my stepdad came along, and just how to work like a adult, and how to get things done, how to be productive. And it's like all of us, in the first RIA meeting, I stood in the back of the room, and it was like, it just blew me away what was going on. And I started understanding it slowly and slowly. And it's like, none of us are here on our own. None of us. There's not a single one of us in the United States on our own. There's lots and lots of people who are willing to help you. And if it weren't for those people that helped me and were there for me and still help me, that are there for me, I wouldn't accomplish anything. I wouldn't accomplish anything. And I learned a trick that a lot of people didn't learn is just go hang out with the people you want to be like. And over, it depends on how smart or how not so smart you are, but you're going to become them. You're going to become just like them.
So thank you for
Thank you, James.
Having this interview, because I hope
I
you
didn't
guys
give
got
a single one word answer, and I was waiting to do that.
No, you did really good. And so you had a good balance. You didn't give one word answers, and you didn't go down too deep in rabbit holes.
Right.
So let's jump into, because we are running out of time. I do want to let you guys know our next main monthly meeting here in Houston is Saturday, January 8th. And then in San Antonio, it is Thursday, January 13th. We have all that information at massivepassiveshow.com. That's massivepassiveshow.com.
And you're forcing me to do like a 2-day event in Houston, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. When do you know what the dates are for that?
Yeah, the dates, we haven't exactly locked down. I think it's going to be the January 29th and 30th in Houston, and then February 5th and 6th in San Antonio.
Okay.
Now, that's not 100% confirmed yet, but that's the tentative right now. We'll have that locked up this week. But let's go ahead and spend about 4 minutes actually on working with your team. You want to close out the show with that.
Yeah, and hopefully we can get through it. So one of the biggest struggles that we have on a day-to-day basis is get people to do what they're promising to do. Because we negotiate with them, we make the deal with them, and then things get out of control and they can't do it. Or we're not providing them the right tools. Or we're overestimating what they should get done in a certain amount of time. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking that, like, who are our partners? And I want to just pick like legs on a stool. If you're doing real estate, you've got to have two big partners. And what I put down is I put your contractors, because a lot of our opportunities are going to be our buying these properties and then getting them fixed up on budget and stuff like that, or maintaining them. And then our property managers. And now sometimes people do that in-house. And if you do that in-house, you're going to even be dealing with contractors and other people more, because the property manager would normally deal with those. And so I just wrote down like some traits and how do we work more effectively with this team. And I'm going to go through them real fast. I wrote down about like 5 or 6, but I think I could probably come up with 20. But I think I came up with most of the big ones. One is and we'll go backwards, but I want to just spit them out, because if we run out of time, at least they'll know where we're headed with this. And we'll post this somewhere, I guess, on the website or the Massive Passive Show.
Yeah, we'll post it in the group, and it's also on YouTube.
Yeah, and if we don't get through it, we'll try to hit it next week too. So in all these categories, these are different people, are different categories for different people, but it's, we're all doing this to make money, right? We're all doing this maybe to make our work include quality and make sure it's sustainable. And we generally have to finish quickly. We have to stay on budget. We can't have surprises when we're predicting the future. We've got to figure out how to build trust and retention. We got to be competitive. It's a competitive business, every aspect of this. And then we have to be compliance oriented, right? And we have to definitely do that. And so let's take some of those down. Remember, there's 3 categories. There's a contractor, investor, and a property manager. I mean, the first one is we're doing this most of the time to make money, right? I mean, it's our job. So we go to work. We're trying to make money. Where an investor might be different than, say, a person who's getting paid wages. At the end of the day, the person getting paid wages typically doesn't have much in the way of residual income. An investor, a true investor, is all about residual income. They put that at a high priority. That's what we want to do. We want to make that making money, not just today, but making money forever. And there's a lot, and so those techniques for doing that, there's a few. We want to become masters of those. And that's an example of something we'll talk a lot about it in the 2-day class, like how we'll put labels, vocabulary words on how you structure those things, but then we'll dive down and like, how do you really, what's the nuts and bolts of actually making that happen? And in 2 days, we can go pretty deep. The other thing we want to do is, the next thing I put in there was quality and make it sustainable. If you're dealing with a contractor and you beat them down too low on its prices, that's not sustainable. because he'll go out of business. I mean, it happens. And believe it or not, it's easier than you think, because contractors ultimately are normal people. They're good people, and they just want it to work for you, and they want it to work for them. And they, without realizing it, cut their throats. And a person who doesn't hire those kind of people all the time, or doesn't have a lot of experience with them, they don't understand what their real expenses are. And things like taxes and overhead, those are really, really expensive, and a lot more than your average contractor will give it. How to do the documentation right, all that stuff. If you're a contractor, and because we've got Pat on our team, we are going to do contractor classes, not for investors, but for contractors. Because without the contractor, the investor can't be successful. And I've been partners with my contractors for 38 years, and I see them go out of business because they don't do it right, or I see that they don't understand marketing. That was one of the 2x4 minutes moments from last year. Is we're going to master marketing, and we're doing a good job. I mean, we have an incredible sphere of influence, and we're going to master it, and not just for us as investors, but for our contractors too. And so we basically said, look, if you want to be the exclusive partner, as long as you're going to meet these compliance things, as long as you're going to make a budget that makes sense, as long as you're not going to give us surprises, we're going to keep you on our team. So, and I think we have done really good with the group that we picked. So quality and sustainable, and so whether you're an investor, a contractor, a property manager, you should be going for that. Finish quickly. Is get the damn job done. Whether you're an investor, whether you're a property manager, if you're renting something, get it done now. So I do hear the music.
Yes, we are out of time. Thank you for listening. Go to MassivePassiveShow.com, and we will see you guys soon.
Yeah.
Have a Merry Christmas and Happy Holiday and all that stuff.